Hello, my name is Laura. You're watching the Beanbird 2 channel where we talk about testimonies and the goodness of God. Today I have a little story for you. I was cutting the grass and I was thinking about a Bible verse from Isaiah. It was 58:8. The glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. Also, Isaiah 52:12. For the Lord will go before you, and the God of Israel will be your rear guard. We think a lot about things that could happen, what might happen, and sometimes thinking that way can cause me to have a lot of anxiety. I think about all the bad things, all the bad outcomes, and unfortunately, I tend to be more of a glasses half full kind of person. I'm always looking for what could go wrong or worst case scenarios. But the Lord is our rear guard, and I have a story for you about something that happened to me a long time ago when I was a teenager, and it'll kind of illustrate what I'm trying to say here. So when I was 16, my family expected me to get a job, and so I was working at a company called Fashion Bug, which is a clothing store that was located in a strip mall type shopping center. And my family expected that wherever I got a job, I had to be able to walk there and back because it was understood that I wouldn't have a vehicle and I wouldn't have transportation. So my mom told me, get a job, make sure you can walk to it. And Fashion Bug was the place that I ended up getting a job at. And I had to walk not very far, maybe half a mile from the house, and it did involve crossing an alley and a large road and then walking through the shopping center to get to that business. And I walked there and back many times alone. My shift was usually 4 to 9, and so oftentimes that meant walking home alone in the dark. And I really didn't think too much of it. I mean, I was a little nervous because it was dark, but I was watchful, generally speaking, about what was going on around me. And I briskly walked home. I didn't make any detours and didn't have any issues. Until one day, I had walked home from work after 9 o'clock, and I had gone to my bedroom to change out of my work clothes and get ready for bed when our neighbor across the street had knocked on our front door. And he talked to my dad, and I guess what had happened is that my neighbor who lived across the street from us was sitting on his front porch in the dark smoking a cigarette. And while he was sitting there on the porch in the dark, nobody could see him, and he saw me walk home from work. And what he saw was he saw me go in through the back door, and then shortly after I passed through, he saw another person walk by, which was a man of some kind, description, that had been following me home. I was completely unaware that I had been followed. And the neighbor said that he was on to like this person, and so he was watching to see what would happen. And he said that he watched the guy go to my bedroom window and try to peek through. My curtains were closed, but there was like a crack, I guess, and try to peek through the crack of the curtains. And then he watched the guy go from my bedroom window to the front porch. The front porch had a picture window, and the man had gone to look at the picture window to see what was going on in the living room. And at that time, the neighbor who was smoking the cigarette had jumped off of the porch to confront the guy, and the guy ran away. So he chased him for a little while, he lost him, and he was knocking on the door to tell my dad everything that he had witnessed. Well, while he was talking to my dad, of course, all my family became alerted, and they told me to stay in the house, and they all went on the front lawn and they were talking to the neighbor. And while I was in the house, the guy came back. And while all my family was on the front lawn, I was in the house by myself. So he came around boldly to the side door of the home and attempted to grab the door handle when another neighbor who was part of like that group in the front of the house, because it had kind of caused a stir in the neighborhood, they said, there he is again. And so they started chasing him again, and they chased him for about 2 blocks, and then he jumped into a car and drove off. I guess there was maybe another person there waiting to pick him up. Either way, doesn't matter. So then we were all like super alerted, right? We were like, oh my gosh, and I was kind of startled because I thought, how long had this guy been following me? I didn't even know to be aware that he was following after me. So after that, my mom allowed me use of the family car to drive to work. So I would take my mom's car to work, and shortly after that whole thing happened, maybe a week later, I was getting ready to leave, and our store was one of the last ones to close. The other stores in that shopping mall closed around 6 or 7, and our store closed at 9. So oftentimes when we left, all the other storefronts were black. And I was exiting out, and the store manager would stay behind to count the till and do the final lockup. But me just being an associate, I left at 9, and the store manager would close out at 9:30. So she walks me out to the front, and she locks the door behind me so that she can go count the tills. And as soon as she locked the door, I get the keys out for the car, and I look at my car, and there directly across from my car was another vehicle parked kind of like this, and it was that guy. I felt like the parking lot was empty, so I had my car, my manager's car, and then this other car that I didn't recognize, but I suspected was maybe that guy again. So I turned back to the store to try to get my manager's attention to like let me back in the store, but it was a very long store, and so she was already in the back and she couldn't hear me pounding on the glass. And so I had to make a decision to get to my car. So I had my key in my hand, and I was just gonna run and start the car and go. So that's what I did. So I ran to my car, unlocked it, put the key in the ignition, started it. And as soon as I started my engine, the car across from me, their engine turned on as well at the same time, as if he was waiting for me. So my heart began pounding like a million times a minute, and I was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? And this was, back before cell phones. We're talking probably the year 1997 when this happened. And so I decided I was going to just tear out of that parking lot. So I sped out of the parking lot, and that car followed me. And immediately I started running through my head, like, what do I do? Do I go to a police station? I don't want to go home. But then I'm thinking this person already knows where I live. And so I decided, I think from watching too many movies, that I was going to try to lose them in a subdivision. So I drove, over the speed limit into a subdivision, pulled into a community that was dark, and I drove into somebody's driveway and then turned off my ignition and ducked under my seat. And basically I lost him. And then I never encountered that person again, never had another problem. They didn't chase me anymore. They didn't stalk me anymore. That was the end of it. And people have asked me, like, I wonder why he just stopped at that point in time, because he'd followed you home. And then after your neighbor saw him, he came back a second time, trying to come in through the side door, and then came back again a week later, like in a vehicle. Like, that's 3 times. And then for it to just end there just seemed really weird. And the reason why I'm telling you this story is because behind the scenes, I'm sure that God was working, and there is a plan for my life, and God is going to make sure that the plan that he has for me will be fulfilled and completed, and that there's nothing that the enemy can do to thwart that plan. And the day that we die is predetermined by God, and the enemy can't snatch that from us, right? So God has a plan for my life. He knows, when my last day will be, and there's nothing that the enemy can do to stop that, to thwart his plan. So I think about God being our rear guard. I think about all the things that I worry about that I have no control over, that I can't change. And God is looking out for things that we're not even thinking about, things that aren't even on our radar. Like the day that I was walking home, I didn't even know to be concerned about somebody behind me, but the Lord knew, and the Lord was with me, and I believe that his protection was over me then. And so when you live your day today, or think about this, just think about how God is protecting you from things that you don't even know that you need protection from. Accidents that don't happen because of God's protection, and that the enemy can't do anything aside from the Lord's permission, and that he knows exactly how much you can bear, and how much you can be tested and when you can be tested, and putting people in your life at the right time. God allows us to go through these things because they make us stronger. We gain wisdom. I know that I gained wisdom from this whole experience back when I was a teenager, to be more wise to my surroundings and be aware of like people that could be potentially following me, that kind of thing. So God protects us, and he is good, and his angels are with us. And yeah, let the Lord be your rear guard. Okay.